Okay, we have one more talk before lunch here. So Hannah Packman is going to speak for the Nature Conservancy and the Shellfish Grower Climate Coalition.
Hello, everyone. I know we've had a lot of talks this morning on the climate impacts on the oyster industry. They were very science-oriented. I am not a scientist. I'm a policy person. So I kind of wanted to shift the focus to the policy side of things. My name is Hannah Packman. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager for the Shellfish Growers Climate Coalition. We have a lot of members in the audience, which is awesome, and I know I talked to some of you all yesterday at the trade show. But for folks who are less initiated with the coalition, I just wanted to briefly explain our history and some of the work that we do. So the coalition was founded 4 years ago when 7 shellfish growers partnered with the Nature Conservancy to help move the needle on climate action. Our founding members are Fisher's Island Oyster Farm in New York, Hama Hama Oyster Company in Washington, Hog Island Oyster Company in California, Island Creek Oysters in Massachusetts, Rappahannock Oyster Company in Virginia, and Taylor Shellfish Farms in Washington. Since then, we've seen some really incredible growth. We now have about 250 members in 24 US states, and also we have a couple members in Canada. Although most of our members are growers, we do also represent other shellfish businesses, including hatcheries, restaurants, wholesalers, vendors, and gear manufacturers. All folks who are just really concerned about climate change and are interested in mitigation and adaptation strategies. I'm sure many of you know from personal experience that shellfish growers are really on the front lines of climate change. They're experiencing the effects in real time. So one issue that a lot of our members are dealing with is ocean acidification. Our oceans absorb about 1/3 of the excess carbon that we're emitting into the atmosphere. And when carbon dioxide reacts with seawater, it releases hydrogen ions, which decreases the pH level of seawater. As a result, our oceans are now about 30% more acidic than they were 200 years ago, which is a really big problem for a lot of our members. So for hatcheries, juvenile shellfish have problems forming shells when the water is too acidic. So we've had some folks see like mass mortality events among spat. For our growers, it's a problem as well. Even when adult oysters have already grown their shells, acidic waters can weaken them, making them more vulnerable to predators and to extreme weather events. This photo here is from Bill Mook, who's one of our founding members. I think these are clams. I'm not quite sure. The top photo here is a clam grown under normal conditions, and the one on the bottom is grown under acidic conditions. You can see really some pretty extreme abnormalities in the shell growth there. Another problem that our members are seeing is higher water and air temperatures. So our oceans absorb about 90% of the excess heat that we're creating, and as a result, our oceans are heating even faster than the land is. I think our oceans are about 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer than they were in pre-industrial times. And as a result, we're seeing marine heat waves occurring about twice as often as they did about 40 years ago. Extreme heat, I know we talked a lot about that this morning, some of the effects of extreme heat on shellfish. So obviously that can cause mortality among oysters and other bivalves. And even if it doesn't, it can also increase the risk of foodborne illnesses like vibriosis, which is a huge issue for some of our more consumer-facing members, restaurants and fishmongers. Heat is also contributing to the frequency, severity, and length of storms. And those storms are also being worsened by sea level rise. So we've seen sea level rise around the United States on average about 1 foot over the last century, and we're expecting another foot of sea level rise in the next 30 years. The Gulf Coast is actually seeing even more severe sea level rise than most parts of the country. So they, in this area, the next 30 years is expected to see about 14 to 18 inches of sea level rise. And so the combination of severe storms and sea level rise is creating a lot of problems for growers, property damage. We're seeing some farms are just being swept away during storms. It's altering water salinity and carrying contaminants from farms and wastewater treatment plants into waterways. The nutrients that are being carried into waterways are contributing to algal blooms, which are unfortunately also worsened by higher temperatures and higher CO2. So all of these factors together are contributing to worse and more frequent algal blooms. These blooms can poison shellfish, deplete oxygen levels, and block sunlight, all of which are really bad news for growers. And we're seeing effects kind of across the supply chain too. After shellfish are leaving farms, swept away roads, issues with the electrical grid, other problems like that are affecting the entire shellfish supply chain from the farm to the consumer. So all these factors are making it harder for shellfish to grow and for growers to make a living. But ultimately, the consequences reach even farther beyond shellfish farms. A lack of shellfish is affecting other businesses who depend on shellfish growers. So it's affecting folks who sell to shellfish farms, like gear manufacturers, and it's also affecting the folks who purchase from shellfish farms, like restaurants and fishmongers. It's also affecting coastal communities where shellfish farms create jobs and bring in tourists, and it's affecting coastal residents and indigenous communities who depend on shellfish as a food source. Finally, it's affecting marine ecosystems where shellfish provide a lot of important services, like filtering water and providing wildlife habitat and protecting shorelines from erosion. So because so many people care about shellfish and depend on it for a number of reasons across the country, people across the political spectrum, we think that shellfish growers and other shellfish businesses, are really strong ambassadors for this issue. So there's a couple of ways that our members are advocating for climate action. The first is that they're sharing their experiences directly with lawmakers and encouraging their lawmakers to enact change. So sometimes those meetings happen in Washington, D.C., or in state capitals. We'll organize meetings for our members to meet with their elected representatives. We also sometimes arrange farm visits so that legislators can visit our members directly and see the impacts for themselves that our members are experiencing. In between lobby days and farm visits, we're still involved in the policy-making process. We will, as policies come up that our members are interested in, we help them call and email their legislators by putting together phone scripts and sample emails that they can use. If this kind of direct advocacy is exciting to you, we do have a lobby week coming up. I think the date is wrong here. It's the week of June 13th. We have a lobby day in Washington, D.C. that we're planning. There will be virtual and in-person options for folks who aren't able to make it to D.C. And I expect that we'll be working on the Build Back Better Act and the climate provisions there. We'll be encouraging lawmakers to pass those. And we also expect that participants will have an option to meet with administration officials from USDA and NOAA to talk about the upcoming Farm Bill and other federal programs that are important to them. The other primary way that our members are advocating for climate action is by educating their customers and colleagues and inspiring them to take action as well. So one way that they're doing this is through social media. A lot of our members have huge social media audiences. They reach a lot of folks. So we provide them with images and sample text that they can personalize to share on social media, telling folks about the effects of climate change and steps that they can take to move policy forward. Another way that, now that things are looking a little bit safer, we're planning some in-person events for our members. I do expect in the next couple months we'll have an event in Washington, D.C. for folks I think we have a couple folks here from Virginia and Maryland, but I do anticipate that we'll have events in other parts of the country soon. That's just an opportunity for our members to meet each other and talk about some of the challenges that they're facing, as well as meet the shellfish loving public and educate them about some of these issues as well. Another thing that we're providing for our members is printed materials that they can share with customers. So we have coasters that a lot of our restaurant members use that include a little bit of information about climate and shellfish and have a link to our website where customers can learn more. We also have flyers and other handouts that vendors and growers can put into orders or hand out at events. Finally, we help our members write op-eds and letters to the editors and place them strategically. This last year, I think we published 6 or 7 op-eds on the Build Back Better Act, publishing them in major newspapers around the country, targeting lawmakers who had not yet committed to supporting the legislation. So in all of these efforts, we have one major goal with the coalition, and that is to secure a low-carbon future in which our oceans and everyone who depends on them can thrive. And so our 3 main priorities in order to achieve that goal and to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by the year 2030, and to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Both of these goals are in accordance with the International Panel on Climate Change. Our last goal is to help coastal communities and shellfish businesses build resilience to climate extremes. So obviously these are some pretty big goals, and we really urgently need to act on them really soon. So the more members we have, the better to help. Joining the coalition is really simple. It doesn't require any kind of financial contribution. We just ask that folks sign an agreement that acknowledges that the human impact on our climate is irrefutable, that immediate and dramatic action is imperative to secure our businesses and communities, that policies that reduce emissions, sequester carbon, and build resilience are crucial, and that improving the public's understanding of climate change is an important way to garner support for meaningful climate policy. After we have new members, we add their names to our list on our website, and we provide them with regular updates, advocacy opportunities, and materials. But there's no real obligation to participate. Folks, we know that our members are running businesses and are often involved in a lot of other things. They're very busy. And so we expect that people kind of participate as is suitable for them. If you're interested in learning more, or if you're interested in becoming a member, I will be at our table just across here. Happy to talk to you more. You can also visit our website at nature.org/shellfishforclimate or email me. My colleague Seth is also here. If you have more science-y questions, he's the person to ask. That's not for me. And we have a lot of members here, so if you're interested in talking to other members from your state, I really would love to connect you all. Finally, if you have not already taken our survey, it only takes a couple minutes. Your answers are really valuable to us. They help inform our policy priorities for the coming months and ensure that the work that we're doing is really beneficial to shellfish growers. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the time.
Great. Hannah, I will leave that slide up there, but you also have that code over at your booth in the vendor show. I promise that was not intentional, that the temperature warning went off, and that the projector overheated while you were talking about climate change. Any questions for Hannah?
Okay, disclaimer, I did work for the Nature Conservancy, retired now. But seriously, climate change is one of the most important issues that we are going to face in the coming years. And what Hannah and Seth, the Nature Conservancy, and so many other organizations are doing is seriously important. Join this group, find out what you can do, talk to your representatives. It is essential that we take some action now. The news out this week is even more dire than we were thinking it was going to be. So that's just my 2 cents. Hannah and Seth, thank you for being here. Love the Nature Conservancy. Join them as well. Okay, that's it. Bye.
Thanks, Skeller. It'll be hard to follow that with a question right now. Anybody else? All right, thank you again, Hannah. Appreciate it. Well, let's leave that up there so people have a minute to put that in.